The paradox of empathy in relationships is a deeply ingrained psychological dilemma that many men face when they attempt to love deeply and genuinely. Men who are naturally empathetic, who offer their full attention, support, and care, often find themselves in situations where their love and emotional availability are not only unappreciated, but also actively rejected. This is not an uncommon scenario, and the reason lies deeper than simple misunderstandings. In fact, empathy, when unaccompanied by strength, can become a toxic trait that undermines not just the relationship, but the very man offering that empathy. Empathy at its core is the ability to step into someone else's shoes, to feel their pain, and to respond with understanding and care. It is the very essence of love, or so it seems. For men who possess this quality, it often feels as if giving everything, whether through listening, comforting, or offering emotional support, should be the key to a successful and loving relationship. Empathy, they believe, is enough. But as we will explore, empathy alone is rarely enough. In fact, it can transform into something quite dangerous, something that causes the empathetic man to lose not only the respect of his partner, but also his own sense of self. It begins innocently enough. The empathetic man is adored at first. He listens intently, understands deeply, and offers comfort that feels like a balm for the soul. Compared to others who may seem cold or indifferent, his kindness feels like a refreshing oasis. For the woman, he is everything she longs for, a man who cares, who will provide safety in times of emotional turmoil. This early stage is one of admiration and respect. But respect, as we will soon see, is fragile. Without a solid foundation of strength, admiration will quickly give way to something darker: resentment. The key problem is this: empathy without strength is easily misinterpreted. When a man bends to every demand, suppressing his own needs and desires in favor of another's, he begins to appear not as a loving partner, but as someone who is weak. And in relationships, weakness is often the kiss of death. Women, whether consciously or not, are drawn to strength. For millennia, the survival of women and children depended on the resilience of the man beside them. They needed someone who could endure, someone who could stand firm in the face of adversity. This is an instinct that lives deep within the human psyche, even in the modern world. Empathy becomes dangerous when it is detached from power. A kind gesture, a listening ear, or a willingness to yield in a disagreement is weighed against an unspoken question: does this man possess strength? The empathetic man, however, often believes that love requires only patience and sacrifice. He avoids conflict, thinking that peace will win her heart. But peace without strength is not peace at all. It is submission. And submission breeds contempt. The empathetic man may believe he is doing everything right, but his willingness to surrender, to please, to give in, chips away at his partner's respect. The woman begins to wonder, unconsciously, if he can stand firm when life gets tough, if he will fight for the relationship when it matters most. This is the critical juncture at which things begin to shift. The empathetic man believes he is showing love by being endlessly patient, by giving of himself without reservation. But to the woman, his compliance begins to look less like generosity and more like fear. His willingness to never assert himself signals an absence of power. Over time, as these small compromises accumulate, the woman starts to feel something less than admiration. She begins to feel something akin to contempt. She sees him not as the strong partner she once believed him to be, but as someone who has lost his power, someone whose empathy has become a weakness. The escalation of these dynamics unfolds in stages. First comes the admiration, followed by small tests. These tests are often subtle: a sharp word here, a demand there, a push against his boundaries. At first, the empathetic man may dismiss these as small disagreements, but they are not mere irritations. They are challenges. Each time he bends, each time he gives in, the woman's respect diminishes. She unconsciously absorbs the message that he will not resist. The tests grow bolder. What once was a sharp tone turns into criticism, and what was once a simple request evolves into repeated demands. The empathetic man absorbs all of this, believing he is proving his love through his endurance. But the woman, with each passing day, begins to see him differently. His patience is no longer a virtue, it is a liability. This process continues until the final stage, destruction. As the woman's contempt grows, the man finds himself bewildered, unsure of what went wrong. He believes he has done everything right, given everything he had to offer. But in his effort to give everything, he has forgotten the most crucial component of any relationship: strength. Strength, not empathy, is what ultimately ensures the survival of love. When empathy is not backed by power, it collapses in on itself, leaving the man broken and the relationship destroyed. The failure of the empathetic man is not a failure of love. It is not that women are malicious or cruel. The real cause lies in human psychology. Women are biologically and psychologically designed to test the men they are with. This is not some deliberate act of cruelty. It is an unconscious drive to ensure that their partner can withstand whatever storms may come. A man who bends too easily, who yields too often, signals weakness. This weakness, this inability to hold firm in the face of adversity, awakens something primal in the woman's psyche. It is not that she dislikes him, but rather that she cannot trust him. And without trust, love cannot flourish. Carl Jung's theory of the shadow is crucial here. The shadow represents the darker, unacknowledged parts of the self that each person carries. For women, this shadow often manifests as a drive for security, for emotional stability, and for a partner who can hold firm in times of chaos. When a woman enters a relationship, she projects this shadow onto her partner, unconsciously testing whether he can contain her chaos, whether he can withstand her storms. If he cannot, she begins to lose faith in him. This is not a rational choice, but an instinctive one. And it is in this instinctive collision between the woman's shadow and the man's lack of strength that the relationship begins to unravel. The empathetic man, believing that love requires only kindness, fails to understand the deeper dynamics at play. He may think that his endless listening, his constant care, will be enough. But what he fails to see is that without strength, his empathy becomes a reflection of his own fragility. The more he gives, the more he loses. And in the end, when he has given everything, he finds himself with nothing. The solution to this dilemma is not for the empathetic man to abandon his kindness or empathy. Rather, the key lies in transforming that empathy. Empathy, when fused with strength, becomes a powerful force. The empathetic man must learn to set boundaries, to assert himself, and to recognize that love does not require self-betrayal. When empathy is rooted in strength, it becomes irresistible. It is no longer a sign of weakness, but a deliberate act of generosity framed by power. The difference between the two types of men, the one who gives without limit and the one who gives while maintaining boundaries, is clear. The woman may admire the first, but she will respect the second. And it is respect that forms the foundation of lasting love. For a woman to feel truly safe, truly loved, she must know that her partner can hold her emotions, her chaos, without collapsing under the pressure. When a man can say no, when he can set limits, it is not a rejection of love, it is a deepening of it. Empathy in its highest form is not about surrender or self-sacrifice. It is about mastery. Mastery of the self, of one's emotions, and of one's strength. It is only when empathy is combined with this mastery that it becomes the most powerful force in the world. This is the truth the empathetic man must learn. Your heart is your gift, but your strength is its protector. Without both, love will not endure. To understand why empathy alone fails in relationships, it's important to delve deeper into the role of power. The empathetic man, who offers his heart freely, may find himself stuck in a cycle where his kindness is misinterpreted as weakness. As his partner tests him, subtly at first, and then more overtly, his reactions matter more than his good intentions. He believes that patience and giving will bring about love and respect. However, as he constantly surrenders and gives in, he loses something vital: his own sense of self, his autonomy, and eventually, his respect in the eyes of his partner. The essential truth is that strength is not just physical or external power, but emotional and mental resilience. Without it, empathy becomes an offering of self-sacrifice that chips away at the balance needed in a healthy relationship. A man who surrenders too easily, who bends every time conflict arises, cannot provide the stability and safety that a woman unconsciously seeks. While empathy is important, it needs to be backed by strength, by the ability to resist, to stand firm when necessary. Without this, a man will soon find that his partner no longer values his emotional depth, his kindness, or his willingness to sacrifice. Instead, they start to see him as weak, fragile, and incapable of providing the security they need. This is a devastating realization for many empathetic men. They think they are doing everything right. They are patient, kind, understanding, always there for their partner. But in doing so, they fail to recognize that their actions, though motivated by love, are rooted in fear, the fear of rejection, the fear of losing their partner. And when fear guides a relationship, it becomes suffocating. The woman, despite her admiration for his initial empathy, soon grows weary of his passivity. She unconsciously begins to test him in small ways, seeking proof of his strength. When he fails to meet these tests, when he bends under pressure, she loses respect. As Nietzsche pointed out, life is a struggle for power. For relationships, this means that love itself requires strength to endure. Without it, love is doomed to decay, no matter how much empathy is involved. The process is gradual, almost imperceptible, but its consequences are clear. First, there is admiration. Then, the first tests. A sarcastic remark, a subtle challenge, a request that crosses a boundary. These small things are not meant to be cruel, but they are the unconscious mechanisms of the woman's psyche, seeking to test the man's ability to stand firm. The empathetic man, believing that compromise is a sign of love, bends. He doesn't resist, thinking that peace will secure affection. But in doing so, he reveals his weakness. This is the first stage where admiration starts to erode. Next comes escalation. The tests become more pronounced. What once was a slight push becomes open criticism. What once was a small request turns into repeated exploitation. The empathetic man continues to absorb these challenges, thinking that he is proving his love through endurance. However, to his partner, this is not proof of love. It's evidence of his inability to assert himself. It becomes clear that his empathy is rooted in fear, not strength. His silence is not peace, it is submission. This submission breeds contempt, and contempt, as Machiavelli wisely stated, always leads to the destruction of love. Once contempt sets in, everything changes. The woman no longer sees the empathetic man as a partner to cherish, but as a man to avoid. His empathy no longer feels like love, but like a form of passive submission. He has become a mere shadow of the man she once admired. His kindness feels hollow, his listening passive. The empathetic man is left bewildered, unsure of where he went wrong. He gave everything, he sacrificed everything, but in doing so, he lost the one thing that was vital: his strength. He sacrificed his boundaries, and in doing so, he betrayed himself. His willingness to be everything for her without asserting his own needs led to his downfall. This tragic cycle, admiration, testing, escalation, contempt, and destruction, is a well-worn path for many empathetic men. It is not driven by malice, but by instinct. Women, as we have seen, are unconsciously designed to test their partners for strength. Their emotional needs, their hunger for security, and their drive for stability demand that they know whether the man they are with can withstand her chaos. She may not know she is doing this, but her instincts demand it. If the empathetic man cannot withstand her tests, if he bends and submits too easily, she loses faith in him. And this loss of faith is often irreversible. At this point, we can look to Carl Jung's understanding of the human shadow. The shadow is the darker, repressed side of ourselves, the parts of our psyche that we refuse to acknowledge. For many women, this shadow takes the form of chaotic emotions, the need for security, and the hunger for power. When she enters a relationship, she projects this shadow onto her partner, testing him to see if he can contain it. She unconsciously wants to know if he has the strength to withstand her emotional storms. If he bends under pressure, she feels unsafe and loses respect. The empathetic man may believe that his endless patience and emotional availability will prove his love, but in reality, it only awakens the woman's shadow. This is where the primal unconscious forces come into play. The empathetic man, believing that love requires only kindness, misses the deeper truth of female psychology. His empathy, unchecked by strength, becomes a reflection of his own fragility. His partner, unconsciously, seeks to break him down in order to test his resilience. And when he fails, when he bends under pressure, she feels lost. She cannot trust him, and without trust, love cannot endure. It is not that she wants to destroy him. It is that her instincts demand she know whether he can withstand her emotional turmoil. And when he cannot, she loses faith in him. This is the tragic irony. The empathetic man, in trying to be everything for her, loses the one thing she needs most, his strength. But the story does not end here. There is a way for the empathetic man to redeem himself. The key lies not in abandoning empathy, but in transforming it. The empathetic man must learn to integrate empathy with strength. Empathy must be a choice, not a compulsion. It must come from abundance, not from fear. The man who listens and gives must do so from a place of strength, not desperation. The man who can say no, who can set limits, becomes far more respected and trusted than the man who always says yes. This transformation is not easy, but it is necessary. The empathetic man must learn that love does not require self-sacrifice. Love requires strength. When empathy is combined with boundaries, it becomes irresistible. It becomes a force that inspires devotion, respect, and love. When empathy is framed by strength, it ceases to be a weakness. Instead, it becomes a powerful tool that enhances the relationship, that deepens the bond between two people. The woman will always choose the man who stands firm, who sets boundaries, and who can resist when necessary. She may admire the empathetic man for his softness, but she will respect the man who can hold his ground. This respect is the foundation of lasting love. It is not enough to be kind and understanding. A man must also be strong, assertive, and capable of withstanding the emotional storms that inevitably arise in any relationship. Empathy, when fused with strength, becomes a transformative force. It is no longer a sign of weakness, but a deliberate act of love, a love that is protected by the strength of the man who offers it. The empathetic man must learn to integrate his heart with his strength, to embrace both his kindness and his power. Only then can he become the man who can weather any storm, the man who is truly irresistible, the man who will be loved and respected for the strength and empathy he brings to the relationship.